One of the things that was just coming to my mind while you were speaking in the previous segment, right, about how you think about ops excellence, how it's played out in, the different kinds of roles that you've done, was that the traditional definition is, oh, you're a very large company, you've been around for a while, you're looking for those nth level efficiencies, and that those efficiencies are valuable because everything you do is at scale, right? So even marginal improvements in your operational effectiveness can lead to significant absolute outcomes from a top line, bottom line perspective, right? But when you think about startups, when you think about companies which are, stay, much younger, much smaller, right? They're growing 200% year on year. Is there an argument to be said, maybe not right at the beginning of your company or even right at the beginning of your company? I don't know what the right answer is, but curious to hear from you. Is there either a right time or a right scale at which you should be thinking about operations excellence? Or is this fundamentally something, right? Whether you're a new startup starting today, or you're Amazon, who's already large globally but now entering a new market for the first time, or you're, say, a market leader in an industry like Uber, who's already, sort of like won the market to a large extent. Of course, there's a lot of competition, it's dynamic, but has become sort of like a verb. Let's Uber it, has become a household name, and is still trying to maintain that position, right? So if you look across everything from early stage startups to something like an Amazon entering India to an Uber and then Myntra in between, right? Any thoughts on whether there's a right time or a right scale at which you should think about operations excellence, or if it applies all throughout the journey of the business, just that it might look different in terms of what you choose to prioritize at different places?
Yeah, yeah. Fair question, Rohit. See, to me, I think, as I said, operational excellence is always a journey. Uh, One, there's no destination. It's not like you've arrived and then you've achieved the pinnacle of ops excellence. But sometimes the starting point is also not clear, right? Which is in journey of or in pursuit of excellence, sometimes we tend to prioritize uh, growth over other aspects of the business, and arguably so, right? Like which is the right need for the business at certain points of time, because again the objective functions are very different, right? When you're looking for your next round of funding, when you're looking for valuations, there are metrics that matter, and sometimes, and hence we collectively start optimizing for those metrics initially. But I think there will be an inflection point again in the journey where let's say you will have to make the trade-off between uh, or when the pressure starts building up to, okay, let me step back for a minute. What you initially do is, when you build a business for a high growth startup, you actually become very, very lenient on all three factors of impossible trinity. You try to provide the lowest cost, you try to provide the highest quality, and you try to provide the fastest service, right? Because that's what consumers love. They just need it. And there'll be a point in your business where there'll be pressure to choose two of the three, right? You have to choose two of the three, because obviously either you are running out of funding to run to get into the business, or your competition is kind of tightening the ecosystem. So you'll always be in that critical juncture of taking a choice of choosing two of the three, and that's where you pivot your business to what you want it to be, right? Now you can say, okay, high will always be that high quality, lowest cost business, but my service levels will always be slow, right? That's a choice. Awesome. So let's say you can take McDonald's as an example, right? Which is, okay, lowest cost, uh, very standardized projects, but it takes time. Like when you go in, you will get your orders serviced very fast, but the standardization is very limited. You have only three or so. You can't customize your orders. But you go to a Subway, on the other hand, again, a very different value prop. They say, okay, my value prop is customization. The consumers can actually choose what they want to do, which means the waiting times will be slightly longer, and prices will be slightly higher. Right? So different pivots that different businesses will take depending upon how they want to position themselves. Like even in e-commerce, right now, uh, there are companies which said, okay, I will be that horizontal player serving all segments, and then that comes with a certain cost structure and efficiency, or I will be a vertical niche player let's say a Nykaa or a Myntra, which is catering to a very particular segment. And then that has a very different way of prioritizing the business model, right? So these choices are very important, and it will kind of it is uh, impossible to not take the choice at a certain point of time. And ops excellence is when, after having made the choice, right, which are the two vectors that you're going to optimize. Now, how do I then start thinking about the third one, right? Now, okay, I'm going to produce the best quality with the fastest service level. Then let me put my entire ops excellence on reducing cost. Or, okay, I'm going to produce the lowest cost item at the highest possible service level. Then how do I make sure that my quality is not degrading? And let me put my ops excellence into that, right? So, so that's how you basically start thinking about it. It's a good framework to start, but I think every organization will at some point have to give it a very meaningful discussion.
Awesome. That's a great answer. I think it's not just about any one of these things. I think people tend to often index a lot on, okay, ops is linked to cost. It must be marketing or growth or product that's linked towards speed, agility, and quality. But the fact that it's the same is, it's like you have to choose the objective function, and then you have these constraints within which you operate. And then depending on where you are as a startup, these different aspects can become important, right? And then that's how, so operations, so the answer is, then I guess operations excellence is important for everybody, but the variable that you're choosing to focus on and the constraints that you're choosing to accept are different depending on the type of company you are, as well as the stage and scale at which you're operating, right? I think a couple of questions have come from the
Let
audience.
me, Rohit,
Yes, please.
I'll let me take those questions. I think in Amazon initially, uh, I think anyone will know, I think it was completely focused on quality and speed. And cost was obviously over a period of time. The idea was to optimize cost. I remember multiple contracts and commercials that were renegotiated after the first few years of operations, and a lot of efficiencies found there. So definitely speed and quality was prioritized over cost. At that, and that was required at that stage of the business. Obviously, you'll have to eventually get to a stage where you're getting the best of all this. Now, also, would like to know the constraints restricting an organization to achieve the impossible trinity? Um, and anyways, as per your experience, to get closer to it, would love to know the approach or thoughts on it. See, the there's nothing called achieving the impossible trinity, right? Like it is impossible, so you can't achieve it. The question is, uh, what are the constraints? Again, the constraint is what determines which two you will choose of the three. Uh, like another example that I can think of uh, is Snapdeal, right? Like started off as a very large uh, online retailer competing with the likes of Amazon and Flipkart. But at some point, they had to take a choice to cater to a very specific market. Like they pivoted to the tier two, tier three towns. They kind of pivoted their entire catalog to a very different kind of a base. So their strategy became very different, and that was based on certain constraints that they had in the business. Right? It can be of uh, of financial, it can be talent, uh, it can probably be the larger strategy from investors. So multiple reasons affecting how you decide to pivot your business. So that's a beautiful example of uh, how someone made a choice depending upon what constraints they were operating on. And 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 another example that I can think of is uh, like even within the the space of, let's say, Swiggy for that matter. Like initially growing very fast, started off as pure food delivery business, but then tried pivoting to certain other businesses in its early days. It went into cloud kitchen, for example, right? But at some point, it realized that that business does not make sense or does not seamlessly fit into their larger goal and ambitions, and then they had to kind of slow down their business. And then there were multiple other pivots that were being tried, but obviously the constraints at that point of time made them realize that they can't achieve excellence in both of them. These are not complementary businesses to pursue. And then some of the decisions to let go of the ambitions were taken. And this happens typically for every business, but But yeah, but that's the reality. Your constraints decide what you prioritize in life.
And I think there's one
In
other
Uber.
question that's come, yeah, which is what were the pivotal points, to sort of think about when the focus within the Trinity changed? That's an interesting question.
Yeah, yeah. See, Uber started off as a, I don't know how many of you know, the first version of Uber launched in 2015 or 2014 was actually a premium experience. So you used to get only uh, the likes of Audis and Benzes on Uber in Bangalore in 2013, I guess. That was when it was launched.
I see.
So that, so just imagine you being able to book only Audi and Benz and Mercedes for Uber to being able to book a two-wheeler and a three-wheeler auto rickshaw, right? I mean, that's the short and crisp answer to your question. There are multiple pivotal journeys that have happened in this overall journey, right? So it started there, but the first pivot was when we had to kind of expand the product portfolio because we were not catering to the entire time. So we said, okay, cost, right? We'll have to let go of cost. So I don't want to be the costliest service in the market today, right? So let me start playing at different levels of price points. And then the first version was your regular cars, the hatchbacks and sedans that came into the market. And then came the two-wheelers, and then came three-wheelers. Now, each of these products have a very different value prop, right? Like if you're traveling in an auto rickshaw, it's a pretty commoditized product, right? Like your service level is what it is. So it's not going to be very different from what you get when you hail, right? So my focus is always on the service level. So I'm not going to focus on the quality of service in auto rickshaw. I'm going to focus on service level, which is how can I get that auto to you as fast as possible, and I'm going to focus on cost. How can I keep the price as low as possible, right? And that is achieved through efficiency and efficiency that I offer to the driver partners, right? Like how can I give him more demand? It's the typical flywheel of how a marketplace works. Right? Let me give more demand to the driver so that I can keep his prices per trip low and then pass it on to the consumer. Right? For that category, the pivot was experience because it's commodity. Now, if I go to cars, right, people look for slightly premium experiences. Hence, I had to then say, okay, in your base version of cars, I'm not going to guarantee experience. There's a certain base level of quality that you will get, but I will make sure that you get it fast and you get it at a slightly lower price. But if you want to choose a different answer, which is I want the best quality and I want the car really fast, then you'll have to pay slightly higher, right? Which is what, let's say, an Uber Premier or the equivalent of some of those versions are, right? So I'll get the car fast, best quality of car, but I need to pay more for it. Right? So each of these products have a very different value prop amongst the three vectors, and 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 the reality is when you start segmenting your consumers, right, and when you have to cater to a larger pool of consumers, the consumers always choose very different vectors. So as a business, I need to have a portfolio of products, which is not just one product, which is optimizing for different two variables of this equation. So there's one product optimizing for cost and service, but lower service level, and so on and so forth. Each of that is talking to a very different pool of audience, and then I apply ops excellence to each of those individually. Right now within auto, right? Like let me give you a classical example. Now, how do I match really really fast? How do I make sure that I get the auto to the consumer real fast, right? And there is a lot of ops excellence that goes inside the backend. Uh, a very simple example is one. Uh, how can I start dispatching a trip to auto driver even before he completes the current trip, right? I know that he's going to complete a trip in 2 minutes. I know there's a consumer who is requesting from his point of destination. Why don't I just give that offer to the driver immediately? Right? It's very simple ops excellence work, right? Which means so it's called forward dispatch in a very technical term, but that reduces the speed of service, right? So I don't have to wait for the driver to complete and then give him the next trip. So very very simple stuff like this. And then there is another concept that's called uh, again in the pursuit of excellence, because the question was asked on how do I get how do I choose two or three? Like again, in service level on autos. Initially the way the ride sharing world used to operate is, hey, I'm going to request a trip. The trip will first go to first driver. First driver can choose whether I will accept it or not. Then it'll go to the second driver and the third driver and so on and so forth. Now imagine if there are four drivers who are not accepting it. By the time you're able to assign a driver, right, it will take at least 2 minutes for the consumer. The consumer is not going to wait for that long, right? Consumer wants immediate service, right? The reliability. So okay, we said, okay, why do you want to send these offers to drivers in a sequential manner? Why don't you just send it in parallel? Send it to 10 drivers at one shot, right? And let's see who accepts first. And whoever accepts first, it's a FIFO basis, right? And then they get a first shot at serving this request. So this way, the overall wait time for the consumers crashed, right? Very, very simple operational excellence work, but still caters to the value prop of lower price, better services, but faster services, but at a base level of quality of the service. So I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah, I mean that's the pivotal journey.